What is going on, everybody? It is Triple Crown 24 back. It's Thursday. It's March Madness Thursday, as a matter of fact. Hopefully, everybody's bracket is still intact when you're listening to this. If not, well, my condolences. Maybe next year you'll get that perfect bracket. But today's show is actually a bit different than what was planned. So, if you recall at the end of last week's episode, I had a fantastic conversation with Alex of Bowman 53. We actually recorded that a few weeks ago. And I Ideally, my plan was to talk about the baseball lockout, but then I got sick, and then the lockout ended, so the entire idea I had needed to be scrapped. So we can table that discussion for another day, but was kind of in need of a new topic to talk about. And a lot of times, how I come up with my ideas for these episodes, if you're wondering, I'm sure no one is, but I'm going to tell you anyways, is I go around looking for inspiration, just doing my normal everyday thing, and I see what inspires me. So I log on to Twitter over the weekend, and one of my favorite accounts whose tweets always seem to be towards the top of my feed whenever I log on is a gentleman by the name of 1 Million Cubs Project, or 1 Million Cubs. You might know him as Beau as well. And he's what I would like to call one of the masters of the dollar boxes, right? Some of you guys tell me I'm really good at going through dollar boxes, which is a trade that I like. I have a few friends out there and a few hobby friends that are definitely really good at it too. Shout out to Jeremy of Jeremy IPTTM on YouTube. He's right up there among some of my favorite dollar box partner in crimes. But what's interesting about Beau is that he has perspective of both being, I say dollar box, and by dollar box, I mean a value box. So it could be quarters, nickels, dimes, whatever currency you want to go with. He's really an expert on both sides of it, right? Where he's not only someone who is very experienced with selling, but also with buying. And I wanted to get both perspectives in today's episode. Granted, we could do two separate episodes on it, but I figured we put it in together. I've already introduced him. You probably know who he is, and if you're not familiar, you're about to be. It is Beau of the 1 Million Cubs Project, or just 1
Hey,
Million Cubs. How you doing,
hey,
Beau?
hey. Yeah, this is going to be fun. This is what I love doing on both sides of the table at card shows. So looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite things to do too. It's kind of like looking for buried treasure, and that is all things that we're going to dive into. So we've got two sides of really the same coin to dive into, both the buying and the selling. So I'm going to dive into kind of how I got inspired by to make this episode, and that was you buying a dollar box to ultimately dump into your value boxes at shows. So uh, for those who aren't familiar with where you set up at, tell everyone kind of where you set up at and what you kind of offer to the people of that show.
Sure. So I am in Madison, Wisconsin. I promote a show here in Madison. But it's either 80 tables or 110 tables. This Our next show is Saturday, March 19th. It'll be 80 tables. My April show will go back up to a two-room setup, 110 tables. And then I also do a second show where I just set up as a dealer in that Rockford, Illinois. So at both shows, my own show, I set up my bargain boxes, and then also in Rockford.
Gotcha. Now, when you say bargain boxes, they come in all shapes and forms, right? There are, those bargain boxes out there that I'm sure some of us see that you kind of question where the word bargain really comes from because they're difficult to find. That may be the not so much of a bargain box. But then you have, of course, your dollar boxes. That seems to be what I see the most of, just because people don't carry around loose change. I see 50-cent boxes, quarter boxes, even in some cases, the rare dime box. What is your base value that you kind of offer among your boxes? Do you tier it off, or do you have just one flat fee that you charge?
I do 25-cent boxes and dollar boxes. I actually started when I started setting up regularly at shows last spring. I started just with multiple quarter boxes, and then I started accumulating bulk buys and small collections and buying outright other dealers' bargain boxes. So, kind of just with the inventory, the large amount of inventory, I kind of expanded out to creating dollar boxes. So those are my two kind of my two uh, what I specialize in is both quarter boxes and dollar boxes.
And if you follow Beau on Twitter, if not, you can go. I believe it's just at 1millioncubs, correct, to get to your
Yeah.
Twitter page. All right, perfect. Yeah, if you go check it out, he's very good with posting photos. And if you see it, if you're someone who loves digging through the dollar boxes, it's going to make you want to book your plane ticket to go out to his neck of the woods and go to his shows, because it looks like you could just pull up a chair and sit there for hours. So you have two separate uh, things there. So you have your quarter boxes and your dollar boxes. If I'm going to go through and sit down at these boxes, what could I expect to find, really, just generally speaking, at each of the levels that you offer?
A little bit of everything. So in my quarter boxes, I like to put in what you may see a lot of people put cards in dollar boxes. So a lot of my quarter box inventory is dollar and up. Like when I in November, my last show in November, I didn't do any shows in December, so I had about a 2 month layoff between shows. I'd been taking pretty much the same boxes through multiple shows, several months. So I really needed to turn my inventory over. So a lot of the quarter box cards that I had in my boxes, I would pull out and list in my eBay store for anywhere between $1.50 and $5. There were actually a couple cards that survived through about 15 shows last year that were not bought for a quarter, that I listed and sold right away on eBay for $7, $8. So um, not all like cards that you can flip are picked over. So remember that when you're at a show digging through some of these bargain boxes, even if you're late to the show or if it's day 2 or 3 of a multi-day show, there's still some some good diamonds in the rough that could be found. So that's a lot of my quarter stuff, and it varies from 70s cards, maybe even 50s and 60s cards if they're beat up. A lot of mid to late 70s baseball in my baseball boxes, late 70s basketball tops, all the way up to fresh 2021 and 2022. Right before the show this past Saturday, I ripped open some hanger boxes of Series 1 tops and pretty much put everything in the quarter box outside of the Wander Franco. Everything else went in the 25-cent box. And I bought a big lot a few weeks ago, and there was a lot of recent Bowman. There was a Bowman prospect card of Wander Franco, not a first Bowman, but just a 2019 or 2020 Bowman prospect Franco. I put one of those in the 25-cent box just to entice potential buyers. I had somebody walk by and he goes, "I'm looking for Wander Franco. Do you have any?" And I go, "I actually put one in the quarter box, but it may have been pulled already. I don't know where it's at in the box. You'd have to dig." But I like to spice it up and put some of those types of cards in there. So it's a little bit of everything in those quarter boxes. And then the dollar boxes is going to be a lot of like $3 to $5 cards, where I would list, a lot of my dollar box fodder would be color, Panini Prism green, Panini Mosaic, pink prisms, those type of cards of, not superstars, but some are stars, Demonis Sabonis, for basketball, some of that type of stuff. So dollar boxes is a lot of color, a lot of refractors, key rookie cards, and stuff like that.
There's a few really great points you made there that bring to mind some stories of my own. You mentioned that, like, after a few days of a show or even late into a show, of the single day show, there still may be stuff there. I cannot tell you how true that is. One of my most recent card show recap videos, I found that green Brady Prism for $2, and that was at the end of the show. Like that, plenty of people went up to that table, went through that box, but nobody pulled it out. When I first started my dealings, being a dealer full time, I used to put this Clayton Kershaw rookie like buried into my dollar box. And it probably took, like as you said on some of your stuff, like 15 shows before someone found it in there and pulled it out. Cause I would always like thumb through to see what people were pulling out, just so I knew as well. So yeah, what you say, that is tremendous advice, is that even if you're not the first to the trough, so to speak, that doesn't mean that the good stuff isn't still left in there. It's not necessarily picked over. But what you have in your boxes, that sounds like something that I would want to go through for sure. I know this is at least me personally as a buyer. We'll talk about you as a buyer as well. I'll usually pick up a handful and I'll go through it. And my rule of thumb is that if I can't find at least, X number of cards that I would want out of this box, I'm putting the rest back. Not to say that there's maybe not some kind of hidden gem buried in there, but it is not going to be me who finds it because I don't feel that it's worth my time to go through it.
Absolutely. I do the exact same thing when I approach a table with bargain boxes. Exact same thing.
Spilling all of our secrets here to all the people, creating some competition for ourselves. But yours as well. You get it right. So you understand as someone who likes to go through those boxes what people may be looking for, and everybody's going to have different tastes. So you mentioned that you're not afraid to put a card that might be a couple bucks into the quarter box. Do you have people who come up to you and say like, "Man, I can't believe you had this in the quarter box," or that kind of stuff? Or is that something where they just kind of like, here you go, and they just hope that you don't notice that you have like maybe a $5 card in there or something?
I get a lot of comments where people will say, "Oh my, this is one of the best quarter boxes or one of the best dollar boxes I've seen at a card show." And one particular instance was one of my shows late last year. I'd bought a big bulk lot. I wouldn't call it a collection, but it was just somebody who wanted to offload a lot of recent, baseball, basketball, and some football product. And I got a really good deal on it. And I went through I'm baseball's that's my specialty. In basketball and football, I can work my way around it, but sometimes I'll gloss over and I'll miss some things. And one of which was Klay Thompson had a rookie card. His rookie cards were during like the NBA lockout years, so the rookie cards were kind of funky in like those 2 years. So I missed a Klay Thompson rookie and put it in a 25-cent box. And I had somebody buy a whole bunch of cards out of there because I was just offloading a bunch of stuff, and I paid probably a couple cents per card out of that bulk buy. So still making money on 25 cents. At the following show 2 weeks later, when I was in Rockford, it was the person who bought a bunch of cards, and he said, "Hey, do you look through these boxes?" And I said, "Well, yeah, they're cherry picked. Like I choose what I put in there." And he goes, "Well, you had a Klay Thompson rookie that sells for $40 or $50, and it was in the 25-cent box." And I go, "Whoops." I said, if I would have known it was a $40 card, it wouldn't have been in the 25-cent box. But he's like, "I didn't know if you wanted to know that or if you would like to know that." And I'm like, "No, I think it's great." And that's great marketing, because I had about 3 or 4 people sitting at my table digging through the boxes. So when you have somebody that comes up like, "Hey, that's great word of mouth." Like, "Hey, so, I don't see that as a loss whatsoever, because, you know, I didn't mean to put that in there, but those are the types of cards that even myself, as an experienced, bargain box seller and buyer, even we miss things. And, I've, and like you pulling that Brady, and we've had wins as a bargain box buyer, whether they were planted or whether they were just missed. And sometimes that happens even with dealers that, really know what they're doing, are experienced, but sometimes you miss things.
Yeah, it's inevitable, right? If you're gonna put stuff in there, because I imagine for you, this is at least my sentiment, that anything that goes into these value boxes I put out is stuff that I'm not too attached to. Maybe I even forgot that I had it for the most part. What I love your approach in the sense that we all know that you're trying to make a buck, right? You're doing this as a source of income. But if I'm coming up to your table and I see things like that, I don't necessarily feel like you just view me as a dollar sign. And that happens way, way, way too much, where I see people who get all dejected if they don't sell a card at comps and stuff. And it's just like, dude, if you give people a deal, they'll come back. And I'm sure you probably see that too. That's kind of my next question, is that do you see a lot of repeat customers at these shows where they walk in the door and the first thing they do is they're making a beeline right for your boxes? They're grabbing the first available chair and they're camping out for however long to go find what they want to find.
Absolutely. I have several regular customers that beeline to my tables, and dig through, which is great to see. And I love having that. And you get to know the collectors and what they want. Behind me, I have all of these cards, inside here that could be potential cards that, I can put in collectors' hands. So I'm always asking people, what they're looking for. And when I'm on the other side of the table as a buyer, I'm not looking for anything in particular. Cubs, Cubs refractors, serial numbers, stuff like that. But when I ask people, most of them say, not looking for anything particular. They're kind of what I'm doing, just picking through and trying to find a bargain. But there are some collectors who, looking for a particular player or particular, team. But one, and so this has actually hurt me, not as from my own regular customers, but I set up at a card show last summer. And I was a first time dealer with my bargain boxes. And I was set up next to another bargain box dealer who was a regular dealer. And so he had his regular customers. So I didn't have a very good show because the people who were regulars at that show, and he was a good dealer, he's got good bargain boxes. So they knew, uh, they're going straight to him because they know he refreshes his boxes. He has great cards at great prices. So they're going to go straight to him as opposed to, who's this guy? He's never been here before. I don't know what he has. I'm not going to take my chances and spend my time there if he doesn't have what I am looking for. I'll go to the regular. So it kind of goes both ways. Where if I go on, somebody else's turf, I may not have, as good of a day as the shows that I'm a regular vendor at in Rockford and in Madison.
That's a fantastic point. I love that idea of the different turfs for all of your value box guys out there because it just feels so true. Like you go to certain shows and there's certain guys that you're looking for, and you're like, man, if that guy's there, I'm definitely going there because your reputation does follow you. If you're someone who's considering setting up at shows or you've set up at a few shows, if you treat people right and you have good stuff, people do remember that and they will come to you. And it's really important to keep in mind this, and this is one of the, you're a collector, of course, and you do both sides of the table, and I think that gives you a huge advantage in the sense that you're able to be aware of what those buyers want. You know what the needs are of your customers, and not all vendors really, I think, grasp that at times. So that is a huge benefit to you. So you can kind of cater things to them and allow them to. And like you said, some of them come up to you saying, "I'm just looking for the deal." And this is, of course, a psychology show. That's really what I want to focus in on in terms of this, because finding the deal is just, there's something about us that gets our blood rushing. And this is a study that I was reading up on in preparation for this week's show over the weekend, and I had to reread this because I didn't quite believe it. Some of the statistics that I read up on preparing for these shows, I'm like, okay, I can see that. This one I couldn't. Is that about 1 in 5 Americans say that getting a deal is more exciting than saying finding $20 bills on the ground, or a $20 bill on the ground in a hypothetical situation. Now, we're talking about deals where maybe you're in your boxes, maybe there's a $5 card that you find for 25 cents, or in the extreme case of like the Clay Thompson rookie where you get that. But I mean, that for me would be extremely exciting. That's the story that I'm going to tell everyone about when I come home from the show and I go to tell everyone about that. So that excitement of getting the deal. You said earlier that customers come up to you and they tell you about all these things. Do you feel that the excitement and that wanting to get the deal is what drives them in there, or is it more so just that they're trying to find cards that fit their collection and it just so happens to be that they're at really good prices?
That's a good question, and I think for my like customers, people who are actually going to do business and spend time looking through the boxes and make purchases. I think that's what they're after. They're after a deal. They're after, I know I can find $2 cards in the 25-cent box, or maybe a $5 or $10 the Clay Thompson rookie. But I do see collectors that will come up, and my bargain boxes are completely in disarray. They are sorted by sport. So there's baseball boxes, football boxes, basketball boxes. But inside those sport boxes, it could be a Wander Franco followed by a 1977 Topps Common. So it's complete disarray, no order whatsoever. So I think it's the people who really enjoy, kind of the mess of the hunt, searching for that diamond in the rough. But I do see people who come up and, the collectors that are after sets, set builders, team collectors, player collectors, they may walk away because it's not in any type of order. It's not sorted by team, or by player or by set. So I think the people who do business with me and who enjoy that chase, that's my clientele. That's who I'm focusing, and it's something that I kind of go back and forth with after each show. Should I do somewhat organization, because I know that some people don't like that disorder. And they're going to walk away from a table like mine because they're after a certain card or a certain player, and they don't want to spend 2 hours digging for the potential that they find what they're looking for. But somebody that's just after, finding a good deal and in a good bargain, that's kind of the collector that I'm catering to.
It totally makes sense. I've actually had people tell me before that I'm too organized, and I think that may actually scare people off because when you're extremely organized and you have everything laid out, it conveys a sense that you know what you have. Now, I may not know, you know, water from wine, but at least I'm making it appear that I know what I'm doing to some extent. Whereas if it's kind of random and a controlled chaos, I want to say you don't want to make it too messy or too chaotic, but I think how you do it, where it's by sport, where you could have, cards from different decades in sequential order as you're thumbing through these boxes, it does kind of give you that sense of you're digging for buried treasure. And at least having it by sport, I think a lot of people like to look at it by sport. So I feel that's definitely a great formula. And from what it sounds like, you're definitely catering more towards that collector. Have you ever thought about maybe trying to do it by team, or have you tried that before? Or do you just think that your formula is to do it by sport and that's what you're going to stick to?
It's probably a formula I'm going to stick to, and here's why. Just like you mentioned with your organization, if your table is next to another bargain box table that's kind of like mine, where it's just a mess, I'm going to go to the other table because I see your organization, and that's the first thought that goes through my mind is, well, there's probably not going to be any good deals in there. And in, like, when I go to the National, I usually walk by the bargain box tables that are super organized by team or by set. I'm going to walk away from those tables, and come back later if I have time. But I search out the tables that I like the most, have the just organized chaos where it's at least sorted by sport, because, like, I do gravitate more towards the baseball bargain boxes because I can pinpoint and I know what I can sell most cards for. And if I don't, but I think I could, make a few bucks on a card, I'll take that chance on 25 or 50 cents or even a dollar. But I kind of gravitate toward those messes of tables. And that's probably, the psychology behind my own sales tactic is, well, that's what I like. There's probably other people like me that like that, organized chaos of digging through, and the excitement that you might thumb through a stack of cards. Five of them might be base tops rookie cards, but the next one might be a first Bowman Chrome of, the hot new prospect that, maybe the dealer didn't pull before he got hot and came up. So that's kind of my thought process, and I'll probably stick to just keeping it organized by sport. But inside that, no organization. It's also a big time, it's a big time commitment to sort, and sorting, as you know, takes a lot of time. So it's kind of a time saver for me to, keep that way. I did a show two or 3 years ago, and I did have it very nice organized, and I got compliments that I love that your bargain boxes are organized by team. So I do know there's a lot of collectors that do like that organization, and I have collectors that come by my table and they're like, "Are these organized?" And I say, "No, sorry," and they walk away. And I do know that I'm losing some people because there's no organization to it. But I know that others enjoy that aspect. So it's kind of, how do you sort it? So I'll keep it I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll keep monitoring the situation. And if I decide to have a little organization, I might go that route and just test it out for a little bit.
It's like talking into a mirror, man. Some of these things are like I've had some of these same thoughts over and over for my time setting up, but it's good to hear that I'm not, the only one out there. I'm sure there's if anyone ever is set up and has value boxes, they could probably relate to what you're saying as well. But you touched on, what you're looking for as a buyer. I think that's the perfect key point to transition to here. Let's flip the script, and now you're on the side of the table looking to buy. And for the most part, you're talking about you're buying stuff for your Cubs count, of course, but you're going to be looking for inventory as well, as I'm guessing are the two main categories. So for you, I know that you mentioned like what kind of boxes you're necessarily looking for. When you're going into dollar boxes, give me an idea of what it is exactly that you are looking for. Of course, the Cubs thing we know, but beyond that, if you're looking for inventory, what exactly are you trying to go for without revealing all of your secrets, of course?
Sure. The probably the bargain I can find, which I know is kind of easy out, but I guess particularly I'm looking for mainly like rookies of star players that may not be at that superstar level, but could have some value. First Bowman Chromes or something that out of a dollar box, if within the last 3 years, also, if there's Bowman Chrome from 2015, 16, 17, I'm probably going to flip past that. But if it's 2019, 20, and 21, those first Bowman Chromes, especially any color, some of the booths that I go to, 50-cent boxes, have a lot of recent Bowman color. And I feel just on speculation, that's kind of a fun gamble. And I mean, I can put those on eBay, buy them for 50 cents, put them on eBay tonight for $2-3, and they'll move. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for out of the dollar boxes, refractors, colors, and kind of the stuff that I'm putting in my own boxes. Um, and then also there's a lot of hidden value, especially in like wrestling. I was at a Chicago show back in November, and I'm flipping through, and all of a sudden I come upon a stack of first NXT cards and rookie cards of some wrestlers from the last few years, and they might have even been in the dime box. They were either in the dime or quarter box, and I'm going to take a chance on some of these. And a few of them I sold for like $15, and they came out of the dime box. Some of them were in the $5 to $10 range, and some were dollar cards, dollar 50 on eBay. So those are some of the things that a lot of people see, that when a lot of dealers are moving in bulk, they're buying these large collections, and they may not know the market some of these other sports, namely non-sports, or other sports like wrestling or UFC. So I'm gonna take a chance on some of these Prism rookies for UFC. Pulled a couple that were $5-10 cards out of the dime box. So those are some of the things where, just because a deal is set up at a card show doesn't exactly mean that they know the market on every sport. Like I said, there's football and basketball. I could skip over a $10-20 card that I have no idea. But I kind of know the baseball market much better. So those are some of the types of diamonds in the rough that I'm looking for as a buyer digging through these boxes.
Right, and I think with you being a seller as well, and that being a large part of it, outside of the Cubs stuff that you may be looking for yourself, a lot of what your goal with it is, of course, financially driven, and it makes sense. And I do the exact same thing, so I can relate. Well, maybe not the exact same thing, but there are definitely some continuities that I can see there. So I mean, of course, that is your motivation with it, but what do you feel with this is going to be like kind of a weird question. What do you feel going through these boxes when you get that deal? what what keeps driving you? Is it the sense that you know that you're getting that deal and it's something that you can turn around for and X your money if it's 2x, 3x, 4x, maybe even like 10, 20, 30 if you get someone really crazy in there? Is it just, being like proud of yourself or being disciplined to go through it? Is it just kind of feeling rewarded? Because these are all things that I have heard from people saying like why they love to go through these boxes. What is it for you personally that that really motivates you to go through 'em?
Kind of many different factors, a lot of which you mentioned. I love the thrill of the find. I enjoy, like, it's entertaining to me to dig through a box and be able to find a card that's 10x the value of what I'm paying for it. So there it's a little bit of the thrill of the chase, but it's also financially motivated where um thrill because I know that this 25 cent, I'm buying this card for 25 cents and I know it's worth what it's going to sell for 10. So it's financially motivated. It's just the thrill of the chase. And it's there's a big entertainment factor. This is baseball cards are basically my only hobby. I do some gardening in the summer. I have a bike, so I go on bike trails, but really, especially in the winter, there's no biking and no gardening in Wisconsin in the winter. So baseball cards are like that's what I do. So it's there's an entertainment value to it, and on the plus side, this is of both sides.
I think a lot of what you said is going to be relatable to a lot of people out there, but it may also differ based on the people. So I'll ask this question, and I'm sure people will be like, "Well, that's kind of out of left field here," but it will make sense in a moment. So bear with me if you're listening. What is the age demographic of you see the people, whether it's at your dollar boxes or it's at the boxes that you're going to? What type of age range are we talking about here? Do you see mostly younger people, mostly older people? Or what kind of ratio are we talking about?
I would say it definitely skews older. And older, I mean, that's very subjective, but I would say to break it down, uh, 30 and up. I do have um, I have some younger, I would say in the mid to late 20s that are regulars at my table. And I also have some that are probably in their 50s and 60s. But when I'm the card shows that I frequent, there are a lot of junior high age kids, high school age kids, college kids. They're not really my demographic. They're not the bargain box buyers. And there are a couple here and there, but a majority are probably falling between the ages of 30 and 60, I would say.
It's interesting. There's a few points that I want to come off of that. That was what I was thinking that you were going to say based on you do a great job with your tweets as well. You kind of walk us through the show and show you kind of your perspective. I know that you sent out a tweet this past weekend talking about like the demographic of who was there. And you mentioned that probably the second largest demographic was like those middle school, high school age kids. So even though they are making up this huge amount, and in theory, they probably have the least amount of disposable income of any of the demographics because most of them are not old enough to work. And if they are working, they're not doing it full time because they're students. Why do you think that they don't gravitate more towards these bargain boxes? Why do you think that they're more so going after these showcase cards or even going into maybe your $5 to $10 boxes or looking through, those autograph relic boxes that you see at shows?
That's a great question. I love this. And I think the reason why is they're young. They're young, obviously with the age demographic. So and they probably don't know that there can be a hidden gem within these boxes. But at the same time, I think back to when I was that age, and I didn't peruse through the bargain boxes as much as I do later on, because I was young and I didn't want to spend a bunch of time sitting down. I was very, and I still am to an extent today, very, I'd be up, moving around, going around. And so for me to sit still and look through cards for 2 hours at a card show, there's so much going on. So and that's just my personality trait. So I think that could be one of the reasons when you're young, you've got your friends, you're trying to make deals, you've got your slabs, you know, you follow the latest trends typically when you're younger. Um, and so there, you see when I was in school, we were always chasing the next, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And so you kind of see these bargain the cheap cards, and I think you just have that, when you're younger, you have that, well, there's nothing in there. Those are 25-cent cards or dollar cards. I'm not gonna flip these to my friends. They're looking at the next big shiny thing. So I think that might have something to do with maybe just the attention and lack thereof, but also a little inexperience that they're new to the hobby, and what's top of mind when you're coming into a new hobby. What's everybody talking about? Nobody's really talking about bargain boxes. They're talking about the PSA 10 Tom Brady rookie card or Luca silver. So I think those things kind of go hand in hand with the youthful inexperience, and maybe just lack of attention to sit still for a couple hours and dig through cards.
So well said. I think that we really get caught up in the social media highlight reel too often, especially the younger audience that may be a bit more impressionable, and maybe a bit more inexperienced too, where it is very easy to get caught up in like all the pictures of the big time cards because people largely for the most part share their biggest acquisitions. I mean, the times that you show off like your Cubs cards where it's some like obscure player from the late 80s is if you have like 1,000 copies of it, or it's a funny looking card or something that's out of the ordinary. But you're not going to be posting this like comment out there. You're, with especially with the volume that you have as a collector, like maybe you're sharing something that's a bit more rare, or something that you've been after for a long time, or something that you think that people will want to see. I'm the same way. A lot of people out there, not everyone out there is like that, of course, but really that's kind of the phenomena that we see with social media. You touched on a few points. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to share my screen. So if you're not lost watching on YouTube, first of all, thank you for listening wherever you may be listening. But I am going to be showing this on YouTube, so you'll just have to listen to me as I walk through this. So this is from a retail blog that I like to read about psychology, um, and as psychology as it relates to retail. And a lot of the things can apply, I think, to our hobby. So you see here about, uh, what do people really talk about when they're finding a deal? And I kind of relate this to what do people talk about when they're looking through these bargain boxes. So for those of you who don't have the visual or you're just listening along, for the most part, what it seems to be is that among the older demographics, it's less and less about these extrinsic factors, and those being proud of and being able to brag about your ability to find deals, or being known as a dollar box master, like I called Beau earlier. Is that label important to him, or is it more so about some of these other things that are going on too? Or but largely for the most part, you could argue that maybe some of these are intrinsic because it has to do with personal feeling, but a lot of this comes from validation from others, which would make it extrinsic, in my opinion, because you need that social currency from external factors, thus making it extrinsic. Whereas if it was more so intrinsic motivation, you'd be more so looking at, just being proud of yourself, or, being happy that you've been able to build up your collection for cheaper. That all ties into this. So largely for the most part, it seems that it is more so extrinsically geared towards this younger audience, and then towards the older audience, they're not really as concerned, less than 50% in a lot of these cases, about, telling other people about like, oh, this is where all the great deals are, or oh, look at all I found here. It mostly seems to be something that comes from within. Do you see that a lot with a lot of your, I guess, older clientele, so to speak? Because a lot of them probably fall into the demographics that I just showed in infographic there where a lot of them are going through these boxes and they don't probably seem like the reseller type. They're just going through it because it's something that they really enjoy. Do you feel that it is mostly intrinsic motivation with a lot of your older customers, or do you think that it does apply to some of those things I just mentioned?
Most definitely. And what I see of, you know, the generation, older than us, not, didn't grow up with social media. And I guess to an extent, I didn't really grow up with, the internet until, high school and college. But we've adapted it a little more than the generation ahead of us. And I think a lot of the older generation um, doesn't like to share those wins. And yes, because a lot of people, and what I've seen, I think, with our parents' generation, is if they find a deal, they want to keep it to themselves for fear that somebody else might get the next one out from under them. So it's more of a, I'm gonna keep my bargain hunting abilities secret so I can get the next deal. Whereas the younger generations, especially the millennials and the, I don't know if there's a new generation for the younger, like the kids, the junior high school kids, but they've grown up, their entire life on the internet and social media, where it's just, it's like, hey, look at this deal, look at this deal. So yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, where the more youthful, those that grew up in the internet age, share a lot more than previous generations.
I could definitely see that. It makes sense, and that's really the perception that I gather too. And being fearful of other people kind of beating you to it. We pretty much answered this, I think, at the start of the show, but we'll just reiterate that point again. Do you like ever fear that people are going to like catch on to the dollar boxes that maybe you're going to go to and you're fearful of, or do you ever feel that people maybe are avoiding your dollar boxes because they feel they've been quote unquote picked over already? And is that something that you ever really have to navigate, whether you're both a buyer or a seller for that matter?
For what I share, I kind of like the competition because it drives me, and it keeps me motivated to, yeah, I'm going to share my tips, and I like helping others. So I don't really fear competition from others. When it comes down, there's certain things that I keep a little closer to the vest, and you don't want to give away. You don't want to just hand over the keys to your car or your house. Um, but I feel that the tips that I give could create competition, but there's always going to be, I tweeted out, uh, well, the box I tweeted out at the card show. There's a lot of people. Oh, those are just a bunch of comments, and I like that there's people out there that say those things, because that means I can continue buying these at a penny a card. So as long as there's people that kind of crap on the bargain boxes, and oh, those are commons, I just throw those away. Well, good, because I'm a buyer for those. So that's kind of how I see it. And do I create some competition? I've shared, there's a local card shop in Freeport, Illinois, bargain boxes. Every time he's set up at card shows, I'm the first one there because he's always refilling the inventory. I'll drive over an hour to the card shop and spend an afternoon digging through the boxes. And I know several people that have heard me talk about it or see me tweet about it, and they've gone to the card shop and they've found, and they share with me, hey, look what I found in the bargain boxes. So it just kind of keeps me on my toes. Like, okay, I know that I've got some friends that they're doing the same thing that I do. So it always you know, keeps me motivated to go.
And I get this from time to time where people ask me like, "Why would you say that, man? You're telling everyone all your secrets." Like, no, that's not all my secrets. Some of them are like you said, they're kept close to the chest, and you don't always share everything. But you can still teach a man to fish without giving him all the best tips. And I think that's you giving that kind of insight too. You're not going to be everywhere at all times as well, where you're not going to be at all these shows all the time, and even as we've said before, that there's still plenty of opportunities. Even if it's late into a show, you can still find really good cards because people just may not know what they're looking for, or they're just not interested in like going for the deals. They only want that intrinsic value of getting the cards for their team at a cheap price. So everybody has different motivations going through it. So I think what you say there, and as a bit of a hobby ambassador, you really do a good job of encouraging people to, go out and do these things. And it does not jeopardize what you do at all or serve as a threat to, what you have going on too, which I think is the perfect balance that we all really try to strive for. Beau, I don't want to take up too much of your time, even though I already took up 45 minutes of your time, because I know you got a lot going on. I know Monday is a busy day for me typically. Uh, any final thoughts on value boxes that I didn't touch on that you think is important for the viewers to know?
Covered it. And I'll just, emphasize that, again, don't if you're a day late to a card show, don't think that it's been picked through. Give bargain boxes a chance. And I think what you mentioned early in the show about digging through, and I think that's my biggest piece of advice as a bargain box buyer is take a sample out of a box, 50 card pile, look through it. If there's not a single card out of 50 that you would consider purchasing, I would walk away. Don't spend your time, don't spend an hour digging through a box and buying $1 worth of cards or $2 worth of cards. So I think that would be my biggest piece of advice on the buyer side would be to get a sample, spend a couple minutes, maybe thumb through, look through, just to get an idea what's in there. If it's a bunch of just commons or base stuff you're not looking for, move on and don't spend that time at that table.
Well put. I'll add a little cherry on top of that, if I may. With it's definitely not something for everyone, and your time is valuable at a show too. So you don't if a table is you don't want to force yourself into a dollar box and force yourself to pick up things just because you're going through that. So being able to use your time properly. But if you find a really good box, it is almost always worth it in my experience to stick around there for extended periods of time, because a lot of times you're not going to find many bargains, so to speak, or anything better. And understanding yourself too, you're not necessarily doing it for the reasons that Beau and I may, where we're trying to fill inventory. He does collect Cubs cards, so you can take the tips that you got from him today, and you can apply that for whatever your favorite team is or your favorite player. Maybe you're someone who wants to go towards those more organized boxes because it helps you kind of get in and get out a little bit more quickly. Where you're sacrificing, potentially getting some of the best deals, but at the same time, you will, be able to free up some more time as well. So, Beau, thank you so much, man. I feel like if our conversation was a 4 row dollar box, we only made it through the first row. Like there's so much more that we could sort through with this. So if anybody out there would like to hear a part two, or you want to do, if you guys would like to hear like a Q&A episode, I am certainly open to this because, like I said, in this proverbial dollar box, we've only gone through the first stack. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section of YouTube down below. I always like to make sure that everyone knows where to find our guests. I'm actually going to share my screen with your eBay store here in a moment, but
Awesome.
let everyone know where your socials are while I get that pulled up.
Sure. I am most active on Twitter at 1 million Cubs, also on Instagram, 1 million Cubs, Facebook project, websites, 1millioncubs.com. My eBay store can be found right there. Sports Cards by Beau. 1 million is my eBay handle. Link is also at 1millioncubs.com. And my YouTube channel, 1 Million Cubs Project on YouTube.
Excellent. We'll leave that up there, and I will leave a link to Beau's Twitter page down below. Usually I do a YouTube channel, but he's got all his links like very neatly organized, where you can get to him pretty much from anywhere on Twitter. So we'll go with Twitter for this one here. But yeah, definitely go check out his store. He has essentially a virtual dollar box, so you don't even need to go to the shows to be digging through the value box. You can get some pretty cool cards at some good prices. If you've ever shopped in my eBay store before, you'll find a very similar, if not a better experience at Beau's shop as well. So definitely go check it out. As you can see, there's over 10,000 cards in his store. There is probably something in there that you're going to like. So go shop around, see what you can add up. And you offer discounts for multiple cards too, right?
I do seven cards or more, 25%, that's automatic, on all the regular priced cards. And I do want to, since you have that up, so we're talking bargain boxes. So the last four digits in four characters in these listings, you see RO03. That's how I kind of follow my bargain box buy. So I bought a 5-row box from a fellow dealer this past Saturday, and when I do that, just to kind of track how many sales I do from those particular cards, I give it an internal code. So this code for that particular box is RO03, which just stands for Rockford, the Rockford Card Show 03 for March. So that's kind of how I track internally through eBay what I'm selling from each of the bargain boxes that I pick through.
This man's got it down to a science, ladies and gentlemen. Do not question his ways. So there you go. Go check out Beau's eBay store and all of his social media links to stay up to date of all he's doing. There's a lot that you can learn from him for sure. A great member of the community and a great wealth of knowledge in the hobby as well. And if you have any gently used Chicago Cubs cards, there is definitely a home where they could go to if you feel so inclined. But that is going to wrap up today's show. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to today's show. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening to all of Beau's thoughts here. Make sure to go check out all of his stuff. If you want to listen to previous episodes of the Sports Card Psychology podcast, if you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, they'll all be compiled into a playlist for your convenience. Also on YouTube, all of the episodes are uploaded into a playlist in their complete form where you can go back and rewatch or pretty much re-listen to them at any time. I'm always taking suggestions for future guests or topics that you'd love to see on the show, in addition to hearing your feedback in the comments section down below on the YouTube video or by reaching out through any of my social medias that you can often find in the show notes, regardless of where you're listening to the podcast. Greatly appreciate you taking your time again today. We'll be sure to see you next Thursday again. If your bracket's busted, sorry about that. Hopefully if your bracket's still alive, it's not busted by next Thursday. We'll check back in with you then. But until then, take care, stay safe, be kind.